Well, it would be an understatement to say that today was not the day we've been waiting for, because it has been for the longest time the day we've been waiting for. It's a bit of a letdown for some of us as we observe this incredible exercise by the Attorney General today. On the other hand, we finally do have the Mueller report. We have it, Tracy.
We do. All 440 some pages. We
I
have it.
know, I know. We've been skimming through it already because we didn't want to just jump on the air and give you our thoughts about it. And we thought, you know what, we'll just do it on the air. We'll do whatever planning and thinking we had. We'll do it with you on Narrative Live, and we can do it on Periscope with you talking back to us. So if you tune into Tracy's Periscope feed,
Yeah.
we'll listen to you. We'll take your
If you
thoughts. We'll take
guys
your
see me
comments.
looking down, it's because I actually have my phone and I'm watching the Periscope at the same time. So if you want to chat with us or anything, I'll be looking for you. So
And our plan is literally to go through the report, not word by word, because even that would bore geeks who are fascinated by this stuff like us. We are going to do it fairly quickly by going through page by page and looking for the highlights. And there are many interesting things that we've all been talking about for over 2 years now, which, as it turns out, we were right about some things. Hopefully, we're right about everything, and we'll share that with you as we go along. But Tracy, as you were watching today, your initial thoughts. What did you think as you were watching the I guess it was a press conference by the Department of
I,
Justice? It
I
looked
I
like
don't know if
a,
that's what you could call it. I
you call
mean,
it, I don't know.
my reaction was, is he Trump's lawyer or is he the people's lawyer? Because it sure didn't seem like it. It just seemed like an orchestrated show for Trump.
It did look like an orchestrated show for Trump. Indeed, it did. And I have never heard an attorney general be so blunt in his assessments of a report that doesn't find any criminality. I mean, it's one thing if he said, we found crimes and this guy's as guilty as sin, fine, then pass your judgment. But to assume that the president's anger, emotions, motivations were in any way something the attorney general or any Justice Department official should ever take into account. I mean, to me, I thought we were witnessing the end of American justice, because if this is how they treat the president, how do they treat the rest of us? If this is how the president gets treated, with literally getting away with, I wouldn't say murder, but it's close to murder, because this is not just a crime that the president did. It's a crime that happened to all Americans. And at the end of the day, we're going to walk away from this with all our American population, all the American public, not getting justice for a crime that was done to Americans because our votes were taken away. And there's nothing more important in America and in the Republic and in democracy, in any place where they value freedom, than votes. And what the Russians and Trump did was they took away your vote and my vote and everyone else's vote. And to me, what we saw today was an assassination of justice in America. And the people who were onto that stage should be ashamed of themselves. They really should be, because they presided probably over the darkest day in American history, because America ultimately was built for this. You know,
Right.
the revolution happened because we were throwing out foreign oppressors. King George was a foreign oppressor. And here we are allowing a foreign oppressor, the likes of which, frankly, we've not seen in the world, just come in here, take our votes, and install their own presidency. Even Alexa
Yeah.
agrees with me, by the way. I don't know if you heard her. She's always on
well,
point. She always knows
well,
what's right.
the other thing, Zeb, about this is, Donald Trump spends days, hours uh, criticizing law enforcement. There's dirty cops, and
Mm-hmm.
for Barr, who's head of that law enforcement, to defend him is almost like giving Trump the license to keep doing it.
Exactly. I think to keep doing it and to keep doing it to everybody. I mean, not so the signal that if I'm a Justice Department official today, what I walk away from there saying is I'm going to only prosecute things that matter to the president or to matter to the people in power, because the rest of the people are going to get off if I don't do that. And that is how Russia works. Every time one of Putin's cronies gets arrested or charged, he gets them off. And he can do that because he controls the courts and because it's Russia. But the United States is a very different tradition. And for there to be the absence of Robert Mueller at the reveal of the Mueller report could not have been more loudly apparent than it was today, because that absence is the absence of justice. We put our faith in that guy. We put our faith in his investigators. We put our faith in the process that he had. And regardless of what you see now on paper here, which I think is going to be really interesting, um, the result of this whitewashing overshadows really the report, because what we're seeing now is continued obstruction of justice. I think we are still in the investigation of obstruction of justice, because there's a broad conspiracy of these people, whether it's Trump and Barr or Rosenstein or whoever's doing it, and it's probably, who knows who's pulling the puppet strings behind them. I have some ideas of who that might be, but whoever it is, they're all participating in a conspiracy to rob justice and to destroy justice, and that is obstruction of justice. So, as far as I'm concerned, this is not over. This is just the beginning,
Well,
and we're still
yeah,
in
I
the middle
mean,
of a crime.
let's face it, that's Donald Trump's MO,
Mhm.
is to obstruct justice. I
Correct.
mean, he's been sued how many times, you know, his university and all that. It's continual for him to criticize judges, law enforcement, obstruct justice, because he doesn't want to be held accountable for anything that he may be doing that's illegal.
It's not even that he doesn't want to be held accountable, because I agree with you 100%. In our research of the last few days, in our news story, everyone's got to read our news story, Spy Games, because we went so deep into trying to understand the origins of the Trump fortune and how closely tied it is to Russian mob money and to the Russian mob, that it would blow your mind away. It won't blow our viewers away or our readers away, but if you didn't know, you would be shocked at how, the entire Trump fortune is built on uh, a blood supply from the Russian mob. That money, that dirty money that flowed from the Russian mob in the 70s and onwards, and was, literally sucked up by the Trumps, first Fred Senior, and then Donald. They just couldn't get enough, and they took it and took it and took it. They enabled, in this sort of symbiotic relationship, they've enabled the Russian mob. So everyone thinks of Trump as just being, oh, maybe he accidentally flirted with Russia. No, he is the Russian mob. It happened in the 70s, excuse me, and it continues until today. He lives off that money, and that is why it is such a serious thing. It is not just some little, oh, they happened to build a tower together, or they flirted during an election campaign by having a campaign manager on. It is not that. This is a mob boss being elected to the presidency of the United States, and the corrupt system of the Department of Justice essentially completely ignoring that and letting him walk away with incredible amounts of crime. And so we're not going to stop. I'm not going to stop in pointing this out, because this is not the end. This is something that we will watch and very regularly.
Well, and
Um,
Sam, it's important to point out there was a reason why Barr came out ahead of the report to give this show of a press conference, so that they could control the narrative from the very beginning, so that when we start going through it piece by piece and pointing out, well, this is what the real facts were, they feel like they've already overcome that.
right, right. I mean, we all know. Look, we called our brand narrative for a reason. There has become an ability, because of social media and everything else, a way to twist what people know, by twisting the narrative, by getting ahead of the narrative, by beating points of view before they happen. There's a reason we published our Spy Games last night, because it seems, and it still seems to me, that at some point Trump and Barr are going to turn this investigation on the investigators, and they're going to say, well, you guys were
They
spying on
absolutely
us.
are.
And no, they weren't spying on you. They were doing regular investigation. Trust me, Mr. Trump, regular investigation. So what we're going to see is this idea that they can turn the story around. Not only have they exonerated the guy because Barr just stood up and said so, they're going to say that the investigators are the criminals. These people are public servants doing their job, the people that we rely on day in and day out to give us justice. They are going to be the criminals. And to me, it's the saddest day in America that you can imagine. There does not get to be a worse day than this. However, I still have hope, and I still think that a
It's
lot can
not
happen.
over. It's not over,
You know why
Sam.
it's not over? Because, as I've been saying for so long, the I word, impeachment, that's what the Constitution calls for. why don't we just follow the Constitution? It's a good book. You know, I mean, why don't we just
I'm
follow?
having problems with my Periscope. Can we just
Ah,
1 second?
yeah.
I'm not sure that I have notifications turned on.
Oh, okay. Well, you do that. I'm
So,
going to show people the feed, the actual report because we
okay,
have it, of
great.
course, and I'll yak because God knows I can yak. Um, and let me do this and this. So I'm looking, by the way, you can't see it because I'm looking at it, but I'm looking at like 4 different monitors, each of them giving me different things. And this is one monitor over here will allow us to read together, although we promise not to read every word to it because who can stomach that? We'll give you the entire report. We want to hear from you. If you're watching our show, because we know how activated our community is, we'd like to hear from you as you have thoughts about things. Before we got on the air, I swear I've never seen Tracy as happy and as excited when she was like, Lordy, there are tapes. I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, I jumped out of my skin, and I've
literally
got to give
jumping up
that.
out of the skin.
I got to give that sweet credit to Susan Simpson, the View from LL2, I think is her handle. She's the one who caught that first.
Oh, good.
I think we now have proof that there are some tapes from the 2013, wasn't it, Moscow Miss
It
Universe?
was indeed 2013. It was the year that we have previously said was the year that Trump was coronated. You know, if you
We
go back to
did.
2013, was not only Miss Universe. There was a big gathering of Russian mobsters that took place at exactly the same time. And in our sense, I mean, yes, the luring of Donald Trump probably went back to the 1980s. The grooming and the onboarding, whatever they do at the FSB and the KGB, happened from the 1980s. But in 2013, it became something very different. He was sort of crowned, while there was another crowning on stage. He was crowned as the guy who was going to take on America, and indeed he did a few years later. So let's go through this, Tracy. I know we don't want to read to everybody because who wants to do that? But look at these like white pages. So this is volume 1 of 2. Volume 1 deals with mostly with the conspiracy theories. So now we're not looking here at any of the obstruction charges, but it's the conspiracy theories. It goes back to July 2016, which we've always said is the month to look at, right? Because it was over those 12 weeks in the summer of 2016 where all of this sort of happened. And there's Papadopoulos suggesting to a representative of that foreign government that the Trump campaign had received indications that the Russian government could assist the campaign through the anonymous release of information. So he's talking about the High Commissioner in London, the Australian High Commissioner.
Right. And I believe the Australians came out with just today or yesterday saying that they were ready to confirm certain aspects of this story. So that should be interesting as well.
Well, that is good. They're the one sort of part of the English world that has not yet fallen to these
Yeah.
Russian tactics, and
Zev,
Canada, I
also,
should
if you
say.
just look at the table of contents for both of
Mm,
these volumes, it was amazing because you see all of the names, Eric Prince,
right.
Nadler, Corey Lewandowski. I mean, everybody that we've been reporting on and researching and investigating. It was almost like exciting for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're really going to see what we reported is true. Let's go through it.
It was really a moment. What a nice thing to go through and see that we hadn't missed too many names, and that I can't wait to read what they have to say. So far, so good. We didn't make any missteps, but we're only on page 1. So so now we're into the actual the Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential elections through 2 operations, and then we're seeing the hacking here. I don't know if you can read along, Tracy. I can make the font bigger. If not, I can just keep like mucking through this. But we're actually looking at the hacking here. So they're talking about conducting a computer intrusion operation against entities, employees, and volunteers working on the Clinton campaign, and then release the stolen documents. This has been, for us, the stolen crime, or the central crime. It was the hacking of the DNC servers, and then ultimately the release on WikiLeaks. Seems like that happened. So I'm going to keep going through here. Um, I don't know if you want to read any of these sections. Just stop me, and I'll let
Could you
you.
scroll back up just a second?
Yeah.
Um, and I think um, it was our friend Adam at Class failed reports. Let me see his tweet. He remember we did talked about that sentence that Barr ... and we didn't know
Yes,
what was.
yes, yes.
Okay, well, Adam found it, so
All
let me
right.
find his tweet.
Okay. We have as well our intrepid reporter Daniel Montelongo. I always get his name wrong, in New York. So I'm going to say hi to him while we just quickly figure out what we're going to do with these other things. Hey, Daniel, how you doing?
Hey everybody, I'm great. How are you?
Oh, it's a big day, as you can tell. I've
I'm
got
so
my
excited. I'm all over the
I'm
place. I'm scrolling all over.
oh, that's
Good. Well,
good.
if you see any really awesome tweets of things that people found, just scream them out
Well,
to us.
one of my favorite sections that I've come across is page 290.
Okay.
The moment that Donald Trump learned of the special counsel. Have
Yeah.
you gotten to that? Have you read
We
that
No,
yet?
haven't.
His
I'm on page
reaction.
2. What happens on that page? Read us, tell us a little bit.
So there is a quote. It's him and Sessions are in a room.
Mhm.
Sessions. Let me page 290.
I love the mug, by the
According
way,
to the
Tracy. That mug, I won one.
according to
Just
the
a
notes written
reminder.
by.
Okay, good. Sorry, just a
Oh,
reminder.
okay.
I'm born on the 4th of July, so every gift that I get for my birthday is a flag of some sort. So
Well,
here you go.
you
Mug.
found the right job, I gotta say. Daniel, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry,
So
Daniel.
Sessions is
Okay.
in the room with Trump, and
Okay. So according to notes written by Hunt, when Sessions told the president that a special counsel had been appointed, the president slumped back in his chair and said, "quote Oh my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm fucked."
oh,
The president became angry and lambasted
If
with the
only
attorney
he was
general.
correct.
well, it might
Uh,
still be. So, what was the exact framing that what happened just before that? He was talking to
On May
Sessions.
17, 2017, Acting Attorney General Rosenstein appointed Robert S. Mueller special counsel and authorized him to conduct
Right.
a Russia investigation. The president had learned of the special counsel's appointment from Sessions, who was with the president, Hunt, and McGahn, conducting interviews for a new FBI director. Sessions stepped out of the Oval Office to take a call from Rosenstein, who told him about the special counsel appointment. And when Sessions returned to inform the president of the news, and then pick up to where I started.
Right.
And then
So this is
the president became.
this is in the obstruction section. So this is when where he's learning about Mueller for the first time and not loving what he's hearing, because he
Correct.
knows that it sparks potentially marks the end of his presidency. And his words were, "My presidency's fucked." Is that what he said?
Well,
He says I'm fucked.
Oh,
And then he goes on to say, everyone tells me if you get one of these independent counsels, it ruins your presidency. It takes years and years, and I won't be able to do anything. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. End quote.
and that is
first of all, I
true.
doubt that. but my question is, why would he say I'm fucked? If he hadn't colluded, if there was nothing for the special counsel to uncover, we're not talking about obstruction of justice. We're talking about why would he say that appointing Mueller would he was fucked?
Well, it sounds like he's saying
Yeah.
he was fucked because it would take so much of his presidency, that it would take up his firepower.
Meaning he can't golf 300 days a year?
Meaning he can't golf, or he has to golf 300 days a year because no, he can't do anything with Congress. So it feels to me like maybe that's what he's saying. Although what you're pointing to is another possible thing, that maybe his initial reaction wasn't about that. It was also about, I'm fucked because I committed a lot of crimes.
Well, that's where I was going with that.
I think that's a really good point.
He knows what crimes he's committed, and he knows over what period of years he's committed them. And we know that New York was already investigating him before he ran for president. So it was only a matter of time before all of these potential crimes were going to be uncovered. And maybe we're learning today that special counsel, 14 investigations were sent out. 14. We don't know what many of those 14 are.
Yeah,
but
I noticed
could they
that.
be related to other crimes that did not fall under Robert Mueller's purview, or what he was allowed to investigate? Obviously.
You make a very good point, because not only are there 14 crimes or investigations that are currently referred to by Mueller's office, there is a history of criminality from the president and his organization, which goes back decades. And you say maybe he remembers the crimes. I don't know if he does remember all the crimes. There's probably that many crimes that he's committed. So I think, there is, it must have been a point when he was thinking, oh my God, this is going to end my career and my potentially land myself and my family in jail, because anyone who knows anything about his criminal history knows that it involves his family, involves him, involves mobsters aplenty. So interesting.
And I think you and I discussed this at the very beginning when we started working together, researching. It was probably the worst mistake Donald Trump ever made running for president, because eventually all of those things were going to catch up to him now that he was in the ultimate spotlight.
Right. Or you could also think that this way, maybe they were getting so close to getting him that the only way out was to run for president. That,
Interesting.
that the only way out is to get to, because the president is a unique individual in America. The president of the United States does not have to follow the exact same rules as the rest of us, because he gets immunity.
We're finding that out
Yeah.
now, aren't we?
Yeah. So maybe he thought, well, the only way out of this is up and through the top, and that's what he did. I want to go back to the report. And Daniel, I know you're who's monitoring Periscope? One of you is monitoring Periscope. I don't know if you want to. Okay, so if anyone wants to join us on Periscope and share your thoughts, because we're just discovering this as we go along. But I know a lot of our
Periscope.
a lot of the audience is on is watching and has an awareness of these facts that is often better than ours. So if you're finding things in the report, share them with us. We'll continue to read this. Daniel, if you want to hop off and see if there's anything else.
I'm sorry. I'm a little quiet. I'm like skimming through this right now.
We appreciate that. We need another set of eyes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just DM me when you find something else, and we'll come right back to you. In the meantime, I'm gonna take you out and put the report back in so we can take a read through.
We'll see you soon, Daniel.
Fantastic. All right. See you guys in a bit.
Cheers. Okay.
Seb, let's go back to that tweet from at Clausfeld Reports.
Yeah.
Remember we were talking about?
Exactly.
Okay, so here is the sentence. Although the investigation established that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome, and here's the important part, and that the campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
So that's really interesting.
Super duper important, in my opinion.
Yes, because it talks about the campaign expecting to benefit.
Yes, which means that they were in communication.
They must
had
knowledge. Yeah,
they had to have been. So this is, I would think, is going to come into play a lot with Roger Stone's trial. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this.
Now, it's strange credulity that you can have a conversation about something about to happen but not coordinated. I mean, we in fact do know it was coordinated. Don't we know from the evidence in the Stone and Corsi evidence and the indictments there that they had figured out that it was going to happen in August, and that they were timing things in August? I mean, maybe they were just being informed, but
I think what we're going to go through and we're going to see in this report is that because they did not coordinate with what we said was the major crime, the actual hacking and stealing of the emails, what they did be illegal? Would communicating about what was going to benefit them be illegal?
I think in this case, coordination, yes. I think if you're coordinating the release of something that is hacked with an enemy state or an agency of the enemy state, which I think WikiLeaks can easily be considered, I think that seems to me like it would be conspiracy. And if it's not conspiracy, it's so close to conspiracy, it is definitely a high crime and misdemeanor. And, this is where I think today is going to lead us. I think we're going to all wring our hands in distress over how useless the Department of Justice is and how corrupt Mr. Barr is. But it's also going to lead us to the inevitable conclusion that we have to go to the Congress. I mean, that's the people's house, and the people have to have a chance to digest this and to comment on this. And the threshold there, as we've been discussing often here, the threshold is much lower than it is in the criminal justice system. It doesn't mean it's low to the point where it doesn't matter, but it means that other things get taken into account. So how Donald Trump acts in office, whether he abuses his authority, whether he abuses his power, whether he's acting just badly, on bad faith, or corruptedly, those don't have to be crimes to be impeachable crimes. So that to me is where we're really heading, because it sounds like he was just off by a little bit, Mueller. Like maybe he didn't have
Well, I don't want to
enough to
speculate
convince.
because
Yeah,
we haven't read all
right,
400 pages yet,
right.
so I don't want to. I don't want to speculate.
Well, let's jump back in here. We've gone through a lot of the Papadopoulos stuff, and now here we are in July. WikiLeaks first released the email stolen from the GRU. So we've gone through the whole GRU thing, which I've skimmed while we've been talking. It's been pretty much what we know from the previous indictments. And here we are on July 22nd, WikiLeaks posted thousands of internal DNC documents revealing information about the Clinton campaign. Within days, there was a public reporting that the US intelligence agencies had high confidence that the Russian government was behind the theft of the emails, and the documents from the DNC and the DNC. And within a week of the release, a foreign government informed the FBI about its May 2016 interactions with Papadopoulos and his statement that the Russian government could assist in the Trump campaign. So we know all of that already, but it's good to see it in black and white. That is the day of the crime, July 22nd, 2016. I will contend until the day I die that that is a criminal offense. But we have to defer ultimately to Mueller here. If he does not believe that this rose to that level, it doesn't. Whether it's impeachable is another thing. And there's our friend Kalimnik for the first time. I don't know if you can see that, Tracy, but maybe you want to read some of that.
Yep.
Yeah, do you want to read some of that? And
Let's see, separately on August 2nd, 2016, Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort met in New York City with his longtime business partner and associate Konstantin Kalimnik, who the FBI assesses to have ties to the Russian intelligence. Kalimnik requested the meeting to deliver in person a peace plan for Ukraine that Manafort acknowledged to the special counsel's office was a backdoor way for Russia to control part of eastern Ukraine. Both men believed the plan would require candidate Trump's assent to succeed were he to be elected president.
Wow. I mean, smells like collusion. It walks like collusion. It talks like collusion. But it looks, to me like this is a very interesting intersection of the main characters that we've been looking at so carefully. At the end of the day, Paul Manafort is going to jail for a very, very long time for the crimes he committed. I am more and more in the belief that he is a fall guy. At the end of the day, he's the guy that's going to jail, who's carrying the can for what really happened, which is a much bigger collaboration and conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, and that poor Manafort is paying the price for it. I'm not saying poor Manafort is a nice guy; he's not. But I'm saying he's the guy who's falling for this, and there's even a good reason for that. Paul Manafort owes Oleg Deripaska a lot of money. So if you were exerting some revenge on the guy who owes you a lot of money, wouldn't this be an interesting way to do it? And as we know, the president and his friends are very, very vengeful. So it's interesting to see it in black and white, what we've long heard, that Paul Manafort met with Kalimnik on August the 2nd. It's a really interesting period of time, right? We've been talking about this particular day, August 2nd, August the 3rd, because on that day, we also know, or the next day, Eric Prince, the Saudis, the Israelis, through the Psy Group, and the UAE representative, George Nader, all met with Donald Trump Jr. and proposed even more collusion between those countries. We don't know anything about that because, as far as I know, none of that is really contained in this report. Although I did see, as you pointed out, Nader's name is coming up.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going through the brief beginning of the summary, but I also like that. Really, I want to spend some time going through this later with regards to Flynn, because everybody's saying Flynn really got off was just like a slap on the hand.
Right.
And I'm hoping that maybe this report is going to give us a little bit of an insight as to why.
What do you think it is? Why do you think he got off?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, obviously offered a lot of cooperation. He's obviously been very helpful, and he's a general. So maybe, maybe they treat people in the military a little bit lightly on this. It does seem to me like he was very, very involved in in very many ways with the Russians. Here's another name we recognize quite well: Kirill Dmitriev, the chief executive officer of Russia's sovereign wealth fund, who was among the Russians who tried to make contact with the incoming administration, and he did so in early December when a business associate steered Dmitriev to Eric Prince. Now, Eric Prince is still another name that we need to talk a lot about. Now, Eric Prince is a supporter of the Trump campaign, according to this report, and an associate of senior Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Dmitriev and Prince later met face-to-face in January 2017.
For just one beer.
Just a beer, because you go to Seychelles for a beer every once in a while.
Yeah.
And, they discussed broadly U.S.-Russia relations, just a little chat as one might have of a beer. During the same period, another business associate introduced Dmitriev to a friend of Jared Kushner, who also happened to be there. He had not served on the campaign or the transition team, so it's interesting that Jared's best friend was there. Dmitriev and Kushner's friend collaborated on a short written reconciliation plan for the United States and Russia, as one does over beers, which Dmitriev implied had been cleared through Putin, because I talk to Putin all the time. The friend gave that proposal to Kushner before the inauguration, and Kushner later gave copies to Bannon and incoming Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've known all these in bits and pieces, but this is the finding of the special counsel, that Kushner, his best friend, the Russian Dmitriev, Eric Prince, and Steve Bannon were all conspiring, and we're also talking about how the transition team was going to be formed and who was going to be representing the United States and how it would all roll out. I mean,
don't Russians always have a say in our government?
They might have. Who knows? The way things are going, it's possible.
How much approval do they have for it?
They will in the future. Here's Michael Flynn. Why don't you take this section here on December 29th?
Oh, okay. On December 29th, 2016, then President Obama imposed sanctions on Russia for having interfered in the election. Incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn called Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak and asked Russia not to escalate the situation in response to the sanctions. The following day, Putin announced that Russia would not take retaliatory measures in response to the sanctions at that time. Hours later, President-elect Trump tweeted, "Great move on delay by Vladimir Putin." The next day, on December 31st, 2016, Kislyak called Flynn and told him the request had been received at the highest levels and Russia had chosen not to retaliate as a result of Flynn's request.
Now, firstly, not very legal, because we only have one president of the United States at a time, and we have only one president of the United States at a time. So the other guy who wants to be president of the United States doesn't subvert his policy. Only in this case, he obviously did. There's Flynn running interference on American policy, asking them not to retaliate, and Putin not retaliating. Another, I don't know if it's considered a crime per se. It's certainly bad politics and not the way things are done in the United States.
Another thing that we reported on that I'm curious to see if it's included is the big meeting at the Mayflower Hotel. Have you seen anything about that yet?
It's coming.
It's coming.
Well, actually, no.
Okay,
That should have been already spoken of, because we're already in mid-January here.
That would have been right after Donald Trump.
Right. So we're looking at. Let's go back to May 2016 here. Because it was in the summer, or June 2016. You are right. I am really interested to see what they say about that Mayflower. Well, there's Carter Page. Carter Page going to Moscow, meeting with. Do they say who he meets with here? No, but it does talk about at least 2 Russian intelligence officers. Interesting. Summer 2016, Russian outreach to the Trump campaign continues. Russian lawyer met with Donald Trump Jr. and Jared Kushner's campaign chairman to deliver what the email proposing media describes in official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary. This is the Trump Tower meeting.
That's the Trump Tower meeting, yes.
Interesting. Yes. So again, the written communications setting up the meeting showed that the campaign anticipated receiving information from Russia that could assist in the candidate's Trump's electoral prospects. but the Russian lawyer's presentation did not provide such information. You could argue that WikiLeaks
Right.
was
So
that
the
delivery
whole
of that.
adoption story was bullshit because
Right, but they did get
knew.
information. They got the WikiLeaks dump, and maybe we're all thinking about this linearly, like just because Donald Trump didn't get it from Natalia Veselnitskaya, maybe he got it
Correct.
from somebody else later on. I think maybe that's maybe they're just looking too closely at this, or this report might be much more damaging than than anyone would have imagined, and then this is just being maybe a forced non-indictment. Because I'm looking at this, I just see conspiracy. There's nothing here that indicates that there was no conspiracy. There's pages and pages and pages of conspiracy. So
I don't see the Mayflower.
I don't see the
Hotel
Mayflower.
But I mean, maybe because it's not directly related to the Russian interference in the election.
But it was, I know Dimitri Simes is mentioned because we looked at it through the content earlier. So he may show up a little bit later on in all of this as we go through page by page. Let's see if we can get through this summary quickly because we're almost there, I think. So now we're going to the investigate between mid-January and early February. The congressional committees of the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Judiciary Committee announced that they would conduct inquiries or had already been conducting inquiries into Russian interference in the election. Then FBI Director James Comey later confirmed to Congress the existence of the FBI's investigation into Russian interference that had begun before the election. On March 20th, 2017, in open session testimony, this is Comey Day. We don't have to relive Comey Day, but we know what that was all about. He reveals that there was an investigation underway. And then on May 17th, there we go, the Rod Rosenstein announces Mueller's appointment. And he says, I'm fucked, apparently.
Thanks, Daniel.
I want Daniel to come back. I know he logged off. If you find anything, be sure to log back on and anything of interest we'll throw up. In reaching the charging decisions described in Volume 1 of the report, the office determined, so this is the decisions. This is now, we're getting to the meat of it. Do you want to read that section and then we'll...
Can you just scroll down a little bit? I just want to see the other way.
Oh.
Page 9.
No worries.
I'm just trying to find out what exactly they're talking about here.
This is the overall findings to the conspiracy section. So this is why the special counsel decided not to prosecute. So, can I scroll back up for just 1 second just to...
Yeah.
So in here, it talks about in reaching the charging decision. So this is why he decided to charge or not. And he's looking particularly at the violation of federal criminal law chargeable under the principles of federal prosecution. That's 927000. I have no idea what that is. The standard set forth in this justice manual is whether the conduct constitutes a crime. So that's basically the standard on which they would offer a conviction. And is there a crime, and whether prosecution would serve a substantial federal interest that could not adequately serve by prosecution elsewhere, interesting, or through non-criminal alternatives. So another suggestion that it could potentially go to the House and Senate for impeachment. And so the office determined that Russia's two principal interference operations in the 2016 U.S. presidential election, that is the social media
So this is where they're going to
campaign.
talk about, right, the Internet Research Agency and all of those people who were charged and are still at large.
And what they did that earlier on. What they're doing here is they're talking about why they've decided not to charge. And I mean, we're both seeing it for the first time. So if you want to just read it, or I can.
Can you read it? It's a little hard for me to see.
Okay, sure, no problem. First, the office determined that Russia's two principal interference operations of the 2016 U.S. presidential election, the social media campaign and the hacking and dumping operations, violated U.S. criminal law. Right, we know that. Many of the individuals and entities involved in the social media campaigns have been charged with participating in a conspiracy to defraud the United States by undermining, through deceptive acts, the work of federal agencies charged with regulating foreign influence in U.S. elections. As well as related counts of identity theft It's the United States Internet Research Agency, which we have already all seen very closely. It's a great indictment. Separately, Russian intelligence officers who carried out the hacking into Democratic Party computers and the personal email accounts of individuals affiliated with the Clinton campaign conspired to violate, among other federal laws, the Federal Computer Intrusion Statute, and they have been so charged. See the United States Netiksho et al. Now, harm to ongoing matter presumably is...
Enter Roger Stone.
Yeah, it must be, right?
That would be my guess, yes.
I can't see the word personal privacy there. So this is his green color coding we're seeing for the first time. So he's redacted this for personal privacy. Second one, the investigation identified numerous links between individuals with ties to the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign. The evidence was not sufficient to support criminal charges. Among other things, the evidence was not sufficient to charge any campaign official as an unregistered agent of the Russian government or other Russian materials. That's really interesting. Or other Russian principles. So nobody in the campaign could have been considered a Russian agent. Presumably, that means President of the United States, even though I guess he does not technically work for the Russians. I mean, maybe it's just as simple as that.
Absolutely correct.
He does not get a paycheck. And our evidence about the June 9, 2016 meeting and WikiLeaks release of hacked material was not sufficient to charge a criminal campaign finance violation. Okay. So in other words,
think about that for a second.
They think that the WikiLeaks was a way of payment. You know, if you think of the hack.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, the finance violation is what struck me.
And because it is a service of kind, or it's got its value. Certainly, the documents that were released by WikiLeaks would have had a certain value. So was that an illegal campaign finance violation? I suspect that is not. I can see why that did not rise to that level, because it's documents and emails, but it does seem to me.
I just saw a tweet come through from CNN, and I'm not sure we have it or we can get it, but the appendix to this report does include Trump's written answers to Mueller's questions.
Oh, okay.
So let's remember that we want to check for that.
We could go right there right after we finish this little section, because I think we're almost at the end of it. So further, the evidence suggests that so it's not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign conspired with representatives of the Russian government. This is the sentence, right? I think that we have become, isn't this the one that's in question here? And our evidence about June 9, 2016 meeting and WikiLeaks released the hacked material was not sufficient to charge a criminal campaign finance violation. Further, the evidence was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign conspired with representatives of the Russian government to interfere in the 2016 election.
Right. I think this is a really important clarification. Conspired with representatives of the Russian government who interfered. So what they're saying is, if I'm reading correctly, all of these people, these Russian elect officials that have been charged by Mueller, did not conspire with any of the Trump campaign. Do you see what I'm saying?
All the Russians, you mean?
All the Russians who were charged by Mueller, yes. Yeah.
It seems stunning.
Did not personally conspire with members of the Trump campaign, which we knew that. I mean, that's not breaking news in any way.
Wow, I mean, it's not breaking news, but did these guys just do it because they felt like doing it? Did Vladimir Putin become such an American patriot that he just wanted to support, Trump just because on a whim, that he wasn't expecting anything back? It just boggles my mind that anyone would walk away with knowing this set of facts and come up with that conclusion. Just not possible.
But it may not be a proven crime, though.
It may not be a proven crime, exactly. We're getting to Trump Moscow, which will be interesting. Third, the investigation established that several individuals affiliated with the Trump campaign lied to the office and to Congress about their interactions with Russian-affiliated individuals and related matters. Those lies materially impaired the investigation of Russian election interference. Interesting. Several individuals affiliated lied to the office and to Congress. The office charged some of those lies as violations of the Federal False Statements Act. Those include former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to lying about his interactions with Russian Ambassador Kislyak during the transition period. George Papadopoulos, a foreign policy advisor during the campaign period, pleaded guilty to lying to investigators about, inter alia, the nature and timing of his interactions with Joseph Mufsud, the professor who told Papadopoulos that the Russians had dirt on candidate Clinton in the form of making false statements to Congress. sorry, in the form of thousands of emails. I skipped a sentence there. Former Trump Organization attorney Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to making false statements to Congress about the Trump Moscow project. Harm
Why is
to
that?
ongoing matter.
Yeah, why is that? Let's think about that for a second.
Well, we don't know it's related to Trump Moscow project. It could be just an additional thing in this long list of people who lied. Could be Roger Stone lying, but he testified. He testified.
What
So-
is the next sentence?
And in February 2019, the U.S. District Court found that Manafort lied. So I would say it's Stone, likely, right? I mean, that's the only person that we know lied. It could be Don Jr. I don't think it is Don
I
Jr.
just saw CNN. Mueller's team declined to prosecute Donald Trump Jr. and members of the campaign for campaign finance violations for their participation in the June 2016 meeting at Trump Tower. In part, get this, because they couldn't prove that they willfully violated the law.
Because they are. Wow. That just says it all.
Is that not something?
I guess if you don't willfully do something, you get off on these things. It's shocking.
Mean, how would that work for me if I got pulled over for speeding?
Well, you've got to willfully not speed, so you've got to be unaware of the speed limit. It would be literally claiming, I didn't know that the speed limit.
I mean, what is this about? Ignorance and the law or something?
Apparently, if you're president of the United States or in his family, you don't have to know the law.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, that's the way it works.
Okay.
I find this fascinating that they've listed here a bunch of people involved in the campaign who lied materially about what they did with the Russians. Yet, in all those, and including actual conversations about thousands of emails and talking to ambassadors during the transition period, all of this happened, and they found them they found them guilty of lying, and yet they don't consider that evidence of what they were lying about is evidence of the conspiracy or collusion.
How are you not willfully violating the law if you're willing to lie about it?
And the lies that they were lying about were clearly conspiratorial. I mean, clearly they were talking about thousands of emails, and they were talking about. This to me, this feels like the largest cover-up in American history. We are witnessing a giant cover-up. I mean, maybe before today, I would have given Mr. Barr the benefit of the doubt, but I think he went in there and he said, "You are going to find these people not guilty, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's just the way it is." I no longer even trust. This underlying evidence now is beginning to smell to me because it's so obvious that there was a crime here. I don't know that many Russians. It certainly not occur to me every day to wake up in the morning and collude with thousands of them, and that's just crazy to think.
Yeah, but let's think about this. And I just saw this tweet, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. We're still on. I just take care of camera.
Mueller provided legal justification for why the special counsel was able to investigate obstruction of justice, even if they could not indict a sitting president. The section citing legal precedents also alludes to Congress's power under checks and balances. So we're assuming that we still have a government that runs under checks and balances. And maybe there wasn't enough to arrest or say that someone committed a crime and there wasn't enough evidence, but the checks and balances should still be there. And I think we're going to find out really soon if that actually is the case, Seb.
Well, at the end of the day, this is where I think Mueller has left us. He's left us with no hope that the Justice Department will be trusted or can be trusted to prosecute this, and the only people and the only body that can prosecute it is Congress, and we're going to have to go there. And I know everyone is terrified of the fact that this might be an impeachment process that tanks the next election, that makes it seem like the Democrats have the only interest is to get rid of this president of the United States, and it may make people bored and make people angry, and it may be a lost cause at the end of the day because it may in fact never pass the Senate. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We do this in our system every day. We put people on trial to figure out if they're guilty or innocent. That's the way America works. This guy needs to go on trial and we need to figure out if he's guilty or innocent according to our law, which is weird anyhow, because the Republicans have 60 seats in the Senate. They already have a way to get him off. I don't think they will. My gut says that there are enough Republicans in there who are going to be like, this is disgusting. This is a affront to justice. I might be wrong, but I'd rather
I hope
find
you're
out.
right.
I'd rather find out than sit here and not put the guy on trial. Here is enough evidence to convict him and impeach him and everything else. And for us to ignore that at this time is not.
Well,
doesn't
the
make sense to
total
me.
hypocrisy of putting somebody through that who had a sexual liaison in the Oval Office, and yet not doing it when it comes to possible collusion with members of Russia. The hypocrisy is just striking to me.
It's just, I mean, what the alternative is that we get to keep this as our justice system. We get to keep a system that no longer is fair and just and protects everyone equally. I mean, do we want that? Is that our future? Is this we want to become a dictatorship where the president of the United States can determine someone's guilt or innocence on a whim, or God knows what else it might be guiding him? This is not how we work. This is not how America works, and we can't let it happen. This is the most significant thing that's ever happened to America in terms of a threat to the republic, to the way we live, to the institutions that we have. If we don't today protect that, what do we have to give our children? What do we give our next generations? We give them a kleptocracy. We give them an unfair system that doesn't allow them the same shot that everybody else can get, because it means that only some people are special, and only some people get to climb up, and only some people get to be rich, and only some people get to be committing crimes and get away with it, while the rest of us do not have that same right. That is what we give our children by allowing this to go through. This is not a story about Donald Trump. This is a story about America's Constitution, about American justice, and we are not protecting it if we do not impeach him, or at least try. That's it's what the Constitution says, what the founding fathers wanted us to do. We should do it. And I think, I can't remember the exact quote, but what is it? History is long, but the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. We have to lean into that and accept that statement and hope that we're going to get there. Otherwise, we're going to be, we're without hope in terms of how we've always viewed the world. And the American dream and the American hope is dead if we don't do this. We become just like everybody else.
Yeah. I don't want to depress everybody, though.
Sorry,
there's a lot of really good, yummy stuff.
Let's get to the
report,
tapes. Let's get to the tapes. Let's get to the tapes.
I don't want people to leave this broadcast feeling defeated. You know what I mean?
No, we're not defeated.
We are not defeated. Josh Campbell just tweeted, before we end this section on the collusion, we want to skip down to page 62.
Let me actually I can do it this way, I think, which makes it easier if I do.
He pointed out something really interesting.
All right, so let's go to page 62. Yeah, and if there's any, look at these redactions. Holy moly, we haven't got it here. Whoa.
I think that
look at that.
I think that has to do with grand jury material.
Okay.
Based on the
so page 62. Let's go.
The investigations into the hacking.
And by the way, if anyone else has any pages they want us to refer to, anything they want us to go to, we can do it. We're happy to just look at anything that you guys think is important and discuss it. 62 coming up. Here we go. 62. Okay, so I'm on page 62 now. What am I looking for?
Okay, he says, although we've heard the no collusion conclusion from Mueller report, page 62 is quite damning.
So wait, these pages are not corresponding. So this is 54. Why the page is not?
Because it includes the summaries that aren't page numbered.
Okay, so we're actually going to page 74, right?
Whatever it would be equivalent to, probably.
Yeah, that's not our strong point. As the reason why we're doing. So this area, yes, Kelly and Conway, great. 63 and 62 is over here.
Okay, so he says that 62 is quite damning because Mike Flynn contacted associates who were already trying to find Clinton's emails.
Oh,
Their plan included contacting foreign intelligence services to see if anyone had hacked her server.
so interesting. Again, no collusion, they say, but
No collusion.
and you know what's really interesting is the name Peter Smith comes up here, and you know we talk about this as not being, not getting away with murder. Peter Smith is a terrible chapter of this very of the long book, and you don't ask me not to depress people. However, I can say that
let's
to
take
me
our time
is
and read what the report says about Mr.
well, I mean, it's just
Rest in
depressing.
peace.
Yeah. I mean, people must know he's a Chicago operative who was trying to get these emails and who landed up mysteriously dead. We You can suspect why. And I don't know if you want to read that. Can you read it? I might need to make it bigger.
I can't see.
Let me see if I can make it. And I think it's best. Then I'll try. After candidate Trump stated on July 27, 2016, that he hoped Russia would find 30,000 emails that are missing, Trump asked individuals affiliated with his campaign. Trump asked individuals affiliated with his campaign to find the deleted
emails. There it is. There it is. You tell me that is not a crime and not an impeachable offense.
I mean, I don't see how they get away with this. I do not see how they get away with this. Because obviously the people who landed up going to were Russia. Michael Flynn, who would later serve as national security advisor in the Trump administration, recalled that Trump made this request repeatedly and that Flynn subsequently contacted multiple people in an effort to obtain the emails, including Barbara Ladine and Peter Smith. And Ladine, a longtime Senate staffer who had previously sought the Clinton emails, provided updates to Flynn about her efforts throughout the summer. Smith, an investment advisor who was active in Republican politics, also attempted to locate and obtain the deleted Clinton emails. And everyone should know that Smith is very tied to Newt Gingrich. I mean, this is, their careers have been linked together. Ladine began her efforts to obtain the Clinton emails before Flynn's request as early as December 2015. On December 3rd, 2015, she emailed Smith a proposal to obtain the emails, stating, "Here's the proposal I briefly mentioned to you. The person I described to you would be happy to talk with you, either in person or on the phone. The person can get the emails, which one, were classified, and two, were I can't even read.
Purloined by our
I don't know
enemies.
what that means. Purloined by enemies, meaning stolen, presumably by enemies. That would demonstrate what needs to be demonstrated." So knowledge that the emails had been hacked, and knowledge that they were classified, and a request from the President of the United States to get them, and a representative of the campaign who was trying to get them. This is what conspiracy looks like. This is what it is explosive. I think it's
bookmark this page 662. It's explosive.
It's explosive because there's not a chance in the world that you can read this. The President of the United States.
Well, he wasn't the president then.
But he now is the President of the United States. So we're looking at impeachment. So while he was running for this office, tasked his individuals involved with his campaign to find these emails. They got in touch with operatives in the Republican company.
For his rival.
Yeah.
And then potential rival.
And then they were going to be in contact with people who were able to get it from foreign governments who'd hacked this classified material across.
Yeah, scroll down and you'll see that where they say who they believe initially got it. The Chinese, Russian, and Iranian intelligence services.
Everybody had them? Wow.
It was likely her server was in all likelihood breached long ago, and that the Chinese, Russian, and Iranian intelligence services could reassemble the server's email content.
Well, that is interesting. It's the first time we've seen China, as I know. One of the things that is an undertone here of this entire report is there are so many other countries, Saudi Arabia, Israel, China, the United Arab Emirates, and others that have not been discussed. And yet here is our first look at China. Even if a single email was recovered and the provenance of that email was a foreign service, it would be a catastrophic to the Clinton campaign. Wow. This is Smith.
I know.
Forwarded the emails to two colleagues, and wrote, "We can discuss to whom it should be referred." On December 16, 2015, Smith informed the dean that he declined to participate in her initiative. Oh, that's interesting. So he declined. According to one of Smith's business associates, Smith believes the dean's initiative was not viable at the time. So maybe that's how they get off. They get off by the fact that he declined.
Well, wait. Keep reading.
Just weeks after Trump's July 2016 request to find the Clinton emails, however, Smith tried to locate and obtain the emails himself. He created a company, raised tens of thousands of dollars, Newt Gingrich, and recruited security experts and business associates. Smith made claims to others involved in the effort and those from whom he sought funding, and he was in contact with hackers with ties and affiliations to Russia, who had access to the emails, and that his efforts were coordinated with the Trump campaign.
Read that last part one more time.
That he was in contact with hackers with ties and affiliations to Russia, who had access to the emails, and that his efforts were coordinated with the Trump campaign. I mean, I don't know. It's about as damning as you can get.
I mean,
highlighted this.
Is this? Are these couple of pages why we are seeing the videos by Donald Trump? No collusion, no collusion, no collusion. Are they? I mean, these pages might be what's triggering that.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that we're seeing a lot of collusion here, or conspiracy, or call it what you may. This is probably the clearest we've seen. But in George Papadopoulos's interactions, there was contact regarding the emails. In the WikiLeaks, Roger Stone contacted.
When did Mr. Smith die? Did he die prior to Special Counsel Mueller being appointed? I'm just asking.
We were one of the first to actually break the story, so I can actually tell you a lot about it. I'm going to have to pull it up, however, because I remember putting this together and thinking this is really strange, and I don't believe very many others had it at the time.
Well, I'm just saying, if he is dead, he can't testify to the fact that this statement says that his efforts were coordinated with the Trump campaign.
There's a reason he was killed, and it's, in my opinion, he was killed so he could not testify, and that he was willing to or had testified, and it must have sent a pretty chilling message to everybody who may testify or wanted to testify.
Just to clarify, his death was ruled a suicide.
I believe it's under investigation, actually, for not being a suicide now, if I'm not mistaken. There are questions around it. I think there are. The story is called The Dark Web, and it starts like this. It says 5 of Donald Trump's key advisors, this was in July 5th, 2017, are linked to an attempt to buy Hillary Clinton's missing State Department emails from a hacking broker on the dark web. And you want to know, and it says then for more than 40 years, it tells a little bit of history on Mr. Gingrich, on Mr. Smith. And then his spokesman says, I don't know how he died. The Wall Street Journal reporter had good reason to be inquiring about Peter W. Smith's death. Just 10 days before the 81-year-old private equity banker's demise, he called up Shane at the Wall Street Journal and confirmed a story. So this is him talking to the Wall Street Journal reporter that he had been chasing. Smith revealed that he had mounted an independent campaign to find 30,000 missing emails from Hillary Clinton's private server she used while Secretary of State. Smith was convinced the emails were out there, theorizing Russian hackers could have them. Theorizing, but now it seems like Donald Trump is saying, Mueller is saying that it wasn't a theory. It was what was going on.
Right.
And then it goes on to talk about the operation launched also coincided with Donald Trump's public request for Russian help in finding the documents. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails, he said. I think you'll probably be rewarded mightily by our press. And then Matt Taibbi, who's a UK-based cybersecurity expert and former British spy, tells it this way. Smith contacted him out of the blue. He introduced himself as a Republican Party operative. He mentioned that he had been contacted by someone on the dark web who claimed to have a copy of emails from Secretary Clinton's private server. He wanted me to help validate whether those were genuine. And I remember reading Matt's column, and that's when I realized that perhaps we were dealing with something far, far more sinister here. And then it goes on and on, but it does implicate Bannon, Conway, Clovis as part of this, which is really, really interesting because Kellyanne has escaped a lot of scrutiny up until now. Mr. Bannon, for sure, I have a lot of questions about. Sam
Yeah, so
Clovis. I don't, clearly not.
somebody tweeted to me that there's a version of this report that's like has a searchable database. So I'm thinking
Okay,
later today I'm going to have a lot of fun because I
right.
know a lot of words and names that I want to put in there and see what pops up.
Do you remember who Lisa Nelson is?
No.
Because she's the other person who's supposedly connected to all of this. Um, so this was before the he was ruled an investigation, but I remember the final line. But what about the other 4 Trump advisors listed in Smith's document? How deep was their involvement? I asked. That may be a secret Smith has taken to his grave. So this is a really sad affair. What happened with Peter Smith? He may be an actual, physical murder that happened, possible murder could be, that happened in the midst of this Trump campaign with real impact, real impact. This is a very significant find. I'm not sure who found it there for you,
Josh
Trish.
Campbell.
Josh, thank you so much. What an interesting page. I, when I think about the amount of espionage, the amount of activity, and the amount of criminality that has happened here, and that these people are going to get off on this, is not okay.
It's not over until well, I don't want to say the fat lady sings, but that's the saying. Please don't take any offense.
It's
But
not over until the Senate sings.
I mean, I almost feel like this is a new beginning, Zev. I mean, the information is out there. All the things that we've been reporting, we haven't had a chance to read through all of this, but much of it is being corroborated. So this is almost feels like the beginning of the next phase in this story, in this investigation.
I think there is a bit of that, because when I last, whenever it was, the 24th, when we sat here and thought, wow, how could it possibly be that Barr has found this and Mueller has found this? I was like, how could we have been wrong with 2 years of investigation?
Right.
I mean, you and I have literally spent way too much time investigating every detail of this and reporting it in great detail. And it seems like, I haven't seen anything yet that has not been borne out, or we had not reported on Narrative, which I think is a great testament to everyone who's helped us with Narrative. And there are so many people that have given us information that has been so valuable along the way. But this bears out everything that we have said and reported over 2 years in great detail. And now we have it as fact, as from the Mueller campaign, and it gives us enormous amounts to work with as we continue to do this. The question for me is, we're heading into 2020. If that's the battleground that Nancy Pelosi and others want to fight, because they care about the kitchen counter issues or the kitchen table issues, this is all going to disappear. And the sad thing is, we will lose justice. I mean, I really do. I believe that. But I'm trying not to be depressing, so I'm trying to find some other uplifting stuff. There's Kellyanne Conway.
I mean, that's making an assumption that this is the end, and I'm saying this is not the end. I'm saying this is just the beginning. But I'll also say that your vote has never been more important than it will be in 2020.
Absolutely.
So spend the time, do the research, think about policy issues that are important to you, read up on all of the candidates. Let's make sure that going into 2020, we are caught off guard like we were in 2016. We are educated. We have what we need when we go to vote. And that is going to make a difference.
I'm going to tell you right now that I am not going to let any candidate get to the nomination without a real thorough vetting. I don't care what the mainstream media says they have on anybody.
Agree. And
I do not buy it.
That's what voters deserve, and that's what voters should have gotten prior to the 2016 election, and they didn't. And if anything, we need to learn from those mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't know about you, Zeb, but I'm looking forward to having a little time to dive into all of this and really get to the nuts and bolts of the investigation.
And perhaps now's a good time to do it. We've been on the air for way too long. And look, it's lunchtime. Look at the time.
That wasn't my stomach growling or anything. You didn't hear that.
Actually, no, I do have to get off because my headset's running out of battery, which tells you how long we've been on the air. I feel better about everything we've known because I don't feel like we've been living in some sort of alternative reality. And I don't think that when I hear
Right.
Barr or
But
Trump
that's
or
what I
anyone
was gonna,
say,
that's what
we
I was
know
gonna
the truth.
say. I would hope that everybody will just ignore that sham of a press conference this morning and just go right into the report and see what the facts are, because the show that they put on this morning would lead you to believe that none of these things in this report ever happened, and they did. So take the time. We're going to keep giving you updates. We're going to be digging. Trust me, I will be digging all weekend on these 400 pages.
Yeah,
So,
and I hope to be back. But I think we should get it back on today if we can, because there's so much information here. Although, who knows if we're going to be able to do it as much justice as we want to. You know, I don't know if you saw it yesterday. I sent our followers an email that said this: that Chinese curse, "May you live in interesting times," could not be truer than it is today. History is happening every minute, and it's not the kind of news most of us like. Today is that kind of day. Don't look away. Pay attention. Make sure your voice is heard. Talk to each other. And I think this is so important. You might be having thoughts in your mind that you're not sharing with others, and those other people may have those same thoughts. I want everyone to communicate, to know that we're not alone when they tell us the lies that they're telling us. America was forged from the fire of freedom at a time no less tense than now. We know that America's history is full of conflict, of disagreement, of tension. And it's the same fire that still burns in all of us today. And it's the same fire that will help us build a future tomorrow. And we know that we're committed to building that future. And we know millions, if millions of others Americans are. And it's by far the majority of the population. So don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. This is just another chapter, an interesting chapter, no doubt, but just another chapter in American history, and one that will ultimately bend toward justice. So thanks for watching. We'll be back later.
That was
I hope.
beautiful, Zeb. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll be back later, and we're not giving up. So we'll hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.